This is a really big moment for me because I've never done this kind of thing before. I'm not a bookkeeping accountant. I'm a CFO accountant. I take financials and project forward. When you sell a dental practice, there is some equipment. I mean, there's office equipment, there's operatory chairs, there may be some kind of a CEREC machine or an X-ray machine. That's probably at most 30% of the value. The remainder is this intangible value of branding is a big part of that.
Welcome to CPA Primetime. Today, we have none other than Eric Burgmaier out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, today he is in Napa, that's over here in California, just, a couple of cities away from me. I'm in Silicon Valley, San Jose, but we're going to get much more into that. And before we get into who Eric really is, I'll say this. He's been on LinkedIn. That's where I met him. And he's recently started posting some content. And, he has some interesting insight. He has some interesting insight on, really having some work for your kids as a tax professional. And, even other business owners will get some value when you start talking about that. But without further ado, would love to educate the guests at home on exactly who you are, your origin story, and how did you get here today? Why are you here?
So thank you, Juan. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. I'm honored and humbled to be one of your guests. This is a really big moment for me because I've never done this kind of thing before, and I'm really appreciative of you giving me the opportunity to be a guest. Thanks. So I'm a CPA and I'm also a certified valuation analyst, and I earned my CPA sometime back in the early 90s. I think it was 1993 or 1994. So been around the block for a while. And to get right to your point, I'm out here in Napa Valley right now. I just finished the half marathon yesterday, as a matter of fact. It was the Napa to Sonoma half marathon. So it's pretty awesome, and it's kind of a vacation, but taking the time to meet with you and talk to you a little bit and really enjoy California, Northern California in particular. So
really appreciate it. And I think even though Eric is just now going to appear on podcasts, starting to put out more content, the experience speaks for itself, really, as you mentioned, on our call before this, I was very impressed with the situation that you put yourself in. So without further ado, I'm super interested on Eric5.0. Tell the audience a little bit about that. I'm very interested, and I'm sure they will be too.
Yeah, so I just turned 50 on July 2nd, and I remember 2 years ago, I remember telling my family, I'm going to be 50 in 2 years, and I started freaking out about what that meant. And it was kind of 2 years ago, maybe even a year ago, thinking about it, well, it's just the beginning of the end. And it dawned on me literally like days before my 50th birthday, well, I don't need to look at it that way. Maybe it's instead 5.0 and like from kind of like my generation of like Microsoft and versions and upgrading is like every new big change in software is a new release. And I thought of this in a more positive light. Instead of turning 50 and saying I've got 10 years left or maybe 15 years left, why don't I look at it that same way and just say, now that I'm 5.0, what is it that I'm going to do differently and really bigger than what I've even thought possible? And for me, the inspiration right now, quite frankly, some of it came from you and came from Jose Zavala about really getting into marketing and branding. And it's a thing that I really haven't done. I think I've kind of checked the boxes and all the other key things I need to do is running a small business, but not really getting into video marketing and getting onto YouTube and doing things on LinkedIn. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. And it's going to be version 5.0. It's a whole different way of me operating. And that's kind of how I came up with this. I'm like, wow, it's kind of funny how I could go from being 50 to 5.0, making it positive, and then really what does that mean thereafter?
Right. And I mean, kudos to you, because a lot of people, a lot of professionals, a lot of CPAs would choose not to do that. Right. It's
Yeah.
at least from what I'm seeing, being the marketer in the space, and clients are coming to me. Really, quite honestly, what I'm seeing is the guys under 40, right?
Yeah.
They're really coming to me excited. The guys around 30, they're really, really excited, because they're like, oh my, I can stand out, right? But then when someone with years of experience simply starts talking about their profession, I mean, I'll put it this way. I'll tell you what I told another client the other day, who is a bit over the age of 50. I told him and his partner, hey, I'm excited to start helping you make video content, right? But as far as just what's out there, as far as accounting content goes, when you guys start speaking on your expertise in your industry, it's way too valuable to not record and not put out content, right? Valuable content. And so what I'm interested in is, what do you have planned with content coming up? Is that something you can tell us about? And it's totally fine if you're just going with the flow, right? Like you said, this is new. So
Yeah. No. For me, it's going to be a lot of, okay, so I'm 50, right? And I'll make a big deal about being 50. And the whole idea of being on LinkedIn and using Zoom are new concepts to me. But editing software is something that's beyond my ability to understand. But guess what? My 12-year-old, my 14-year-old, my 16-year-old, they're all very comfortable in that arena. So if I can come up with short clips and use my children to help me edit them, then I'm using my kids to help me grow my business to some degree, and I can pay them. And I think it's a great way to try and get my children today don't want to learn about T accounts, right? And what a balance sheet is and what an income statement is. But if they can help me do some cool editing of videos, then they get engaged. And guess what? Now they're learning, right? And they're learning how to earn some money. And quite frankly, learning how to earn money in this new economy. Things that I don't think I would have even considered a few years ago. So what I want to do in this space is for folks like me that are maybe of the same generation, how do you get in on this and how do you do this kind of thing? Well, we know the content, right? We can use our kids to help us create some cool edited effects, and they love it. And it's a great way to kind of build a little bit of a family business around it. So a lot of my content going forward is going to be around that. And then I'm also a business valuator. So I really want to get more content out on valuing businesses, especially professional services businesses, and really where I kind of have my niches in dental practices. And so a lot of what I do over the next couple of months is going to be around small business owners. How do you use your children to help kind of move, take advantage of the tax laws to help pay for kids, right? Or pay maybe tuition. And then also, what's my other expertise? Business valuations, and build videos around those. So that's really where my content's going to be. I think eventually down the road, I'm going to do a little bit more about practice management, but that might come 3 months out from now.
Okay, love it. And before we take a segue into your practice and your expertise and what you've been able to build, is there anything you'd like the audience to know as far as the tax implications, or I might say the tax advantages of having your children help you out in your business and paying them?
Sure.
Right?
So one of the great benefits is you can pay your children up to $12,000 a year and not have to file a tax return for that child, because the standard deduction for a single individual is $12,000. So that's great. And the question is, okay, can I pay my 12-year-old $12,000 to empty out the waste paper baskets every day? And the answer likely there is no. But I'm sure you're expensive, Juan, and what you do is valuable, and that comes at a higher rate. And not that a 12-year-old can do the exact same thing you can do, of course not. but the level of technology and implications of using that technology is far beyond what I can do. And I'm willing to pay arguably a good rate for that kind of work. So I think I could pay my children a little bit more than $10 an hour to help me edit software, because the market today is charging more than that. And
right.
And that's step one. And then step two is if they're under the age of 18, depending upon how your structure is set up, if there's a partnership owned by husband and wife, or just husband or just wife, and you're employing your children, those wages escape FICA, Social Security, and Medicare taxes as well. So there's actually a second benefit. So this is $12,000 that can go right to a child. And if you're a successful business owner and you're otherwise at a 33% effective rate, you're saving thousands of dollars. And in the fine state of California where you are, you know what the state income tax rate is on top of that. So the tax savings can be substantial. Great way to help get your kids start saving for college for themselves and running it through the business.
I love it. And, you know, I think you have tons of value to give the audience based off of your experience. So one of the things that is kind of close to home for me is that being in PricewaterhouseCoopers, right? I have just seen a lot of my friends looked at as a devalued commodity because people don't necessarily put a high value on accountants as they did really, like I would say in the past, but studying this space, it could even go as far back as the 1600s and the 1700s when you needed accountants to build nations, and there were paintings of accountants, right? So what you just said is actually incredibly valuable, especially if this is the first time someone is hearing that on the podcast. So here's my question to you based off of that answer that you gave. From your experience, have you seen, you know, business owners truly understand the value of accountants, of a CPA helping them?
No.
You can be honest. This is the podcast for this. Yeah.
You know, I do. We tend to earn business because the previous CPA has really not been proactive. And, you know, and to the extent other firms out there continue to serve in that manner, we'll continue to grow, because we're always trying to look at, you know, certainly you need the history to kind of predict the future or plan for the future. But I think we're always very good at telling the history, and maybe not so good at doing forecasting and planning and projections. And there's a lot of us out there that are doing that. And then there's a lot that are still kind of stuck in this old mindset. And when we're able to win some nice new work, a lot of times we're getting that because the previous CPA is not making those proactive phone calls. And that's really what we want to be advisors more than anything else. My job more than anything is kind of look at I'm more the CFO, and in that position as the CFO for that small business owner, I need good records, which my team does, but then I need to work with the business owner and say, where do you want to go? What are we doing with that? And I'm lucky because I have a great team that helps me do that kind of work, so that I'm not a bookkeeper. I don't know how to use QuickBooks. I don't know how to use Xero. By the way, we love Xero. I'm not a bookkeeping accountant. I'm a CFO accountant. I take the financials and project forward. And that's my job in my firm. And we end up getting business because a lot of times many folks still look from a historical perspective, and not enough planning goes into what they do. So.
Yeah. And I think that's first of all, I agree with you. That's what we've seen. That's even what some of my clients market to, and really even say in their media is that, hey, you know, we'll get back to you, right? We'll talk with you. We'll advise you. We're forward looking, right? So it's like everyone that's trying to land business via marketing right now on LinkedIn is really trying to frame themselves. Whether some people don't like this word, whether you like it or not, advisor, right? Whether you like it or not, you're right. They do see accountants as previously record keeping looking only. And even other financial advisors that maybe they might be competing with a CPA as a financial advisor or talking about the accounting industry, they even have that in their arsenal to kind of use in their media, saying, hey, these accountants, right, they don't know what they're talking about because they're only looking backwards. I don't like that, but but I think that's a great segue into your experience, right? So, I mean, coming this far, how did you really gain the accounting knowledge that you have now? You know, why dental practices?
Sure. You know, I started my career, I 2 years in the Army infantry right after college, and then went into.
Thank you for
at the time,
serving.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I Army infantry, but served during perfect peacetime. Lucky, I was a lucky guy. Started my career with Cooper. When I went to college, we were the Big Eight. When I left college, well, I think we were just becoming the Big Six. So I started with the Big Six, Coopers and Lybrand. By the time I left Coopers and Lybrand, we were merging with Price Waterhouse to become Price Waterhouse Coopers. I did great 5 years. It was the best 5 years. A great place to start my career. I'm blessed to have that behind me. From there, I worked for Cigna. Cigna was a Fortune 50 company at the time. Worked within their healthcare division. Healthcare has been in my background all along. I had 20 great years between big Fortune 50, Big Six, big academic private medicine. And then I ended up buying a CPA firm about 10 years ago. I'd say, you know what? I kind of lost my passion being part of a big system, and I wanted to try something different. And I bought this little firm, and it was a major change in lifestyle for the family and I. We went from having great salaries to becoming small business owners and really struggling with making payroll and all the stuff that comes along with being a small business owner. And in my little practice at the time I acquired it, there were a handful of dentists. And the guy I bought the practice from was a traditional accountant. All he cared about was doing tax returns, you know, and maybe some tax planning in August. And then I took that little bit of those dental clients and started asking them questions about how are they running their business and what more may they need from me. And then began to build this from just a tax shop and maybe bookkeeping shop into more of an advisory shop. And so I became very well known in the local community as being the go-to healthcare, go-to dental CPA. And that took some time. But now today, really our core business is serving dentists and doctors in the Albuquerque and New Mexico community.
Yeah, that certainly is an interesting way to get into focusing on dental practices. And I saw that you posted a video about the valuation of dental practices the other day. Would you like to speak a little bit on that? I mean, I think that'd be valuable for the audience.
Yeah, sure. You know, when I started getting more and more referral business, I ended up getting referrals from bankers and the banker would come to me and say, you know, we just sold a practice to this dentist, this young doc. And you know, 3 months in finding, well, this kid way overpaid. He's not able to make debt service at the moment. How did this practice get valued? And I started learning more about the valuation process and elected to get my CVA credentials, Certified Valuation Analyst credentials, so I could become a better advisor up front to these guys and then guys and gals, and then begin helping them. By the way, I grew up in New York City, so when I say guys, it's pretty much everybody, right? Guys and gals.
Okay.
And so trying to help these folks better understand the mechanics of the valuation process. So when we look at what it is they're buying and we look at the cash flow that comes off of that, is there enough to cover operating expenses, pay them a good salary, and then cover debt service, and likely, and most importantly, is there a little bit more left to help them cover their student loan debt, get a little bit ahead on their student loan debt? Because these kids are coming out with way so much debt, and one of the ways they can cover that debt is buy a practice and generate a little bit more free cash flow for them. So that's kind of how we took this, and one of the things that I really like about, you know, the idea of being an advisor is we can be better advisors now to our clients wherever they are in their career, because now we know at the end of the career when they're getting ready to sell, what are the elements of that sell process, and how do we make sure that when they're looking at their practice, we're trying to get the most value for them when they're ready to sell. That's where you can become a real advisor. why going into this niche and going deep into it is important, especially in today's economy as you're an accountant trying to do more for somebody.
Yeah. So that's certainly interesting. And I would be curious, do you have any plans to buy dental practices, sell businesses yourself since you know so much?
Yeah, we actually are in the business right now. If you asked me 3 years ago, what do I think I'd be doing? I thought for sure I would just be doing valuations. I didn't think 3 years ago we'd actually be selling dental practices. And we've actually sold on average 2 a year. We've actually sold 2 so far this year. And the likelihood is we've got about another 3 to 4 more to sell this year. So we're really kind of building this up. You know, if you think about that flywheel concept, it's starting to spin on its own. And we're starting to really make a name for ourselves, especially in the New Mexico market. So yeah, we're selling
really
more practicing. Yeah. And because we're selling them, now we can even yet again be even better advisors to our clients, because now we know who's buying, what the buy process looks like, what are the right attorneys to be using in this process, when a letter of intent and a contract is put together, what should we be looking for? And if you're going to work for the buying doc, what does that employment agreement look like thereafter? So that's really where we're CPAs. And what does it really mean to be an advisor? I just gave you a whole bunch to think about, because now we're really advising them beyond the tax consequences of selling the practice.
Yeah, way beyond. So, I mean, guys, if you have a dental practice or you know anyone with one, Eric is the guy. I mean, the proof is there. I mean, I would say, right? Thank you. So what, I guess, you know, and I don't know if you don't want to reveal your secrets or something like that, but what really increases the value of a dental practice that a lot of people might not know about?
Sure. And, you know, valuing a dental practice and the sale of a dental practice is not very different from the selling of any other practice, any other business. It's really the earnings more than anything else. So what we want to make sure is those earnings really as a percentage of revenue. You know, the higher that margin, the higher that multiple can be. If you're buying a really profitable business, you're willing to pay more for that business. So as we're going through as accountants, as serving our clients on a monthly basis, we are looking at the overhead, and we're looking at that very closely. And we do know over time what is a highly profitable practice as opposed to one that may be struggling. And a lot of times, unfortunately, the misconception is it's a multiple of revenue. And that overly simplifies the process. You know, if you have 2 practices, both generating $1 million, but one has $400,000 of net income and the other has $500,000 in net income, the one with more net income on that revenue should go for a higher sale price. And so that's really what we're looking at. Don't mean to go into the weeds, but that's something that's really important to me, is knowing that at the end of the day, it's the earnings, the take home that drives value, not just revenue.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, at least to the accounting world. And, you know, people listen to this podcast for marketing too. And what I would say for the the marketing nerds out there is James Orsini was on my podcast. He's if you're deep in the marketing world, then you should look at him. But he was saying that one of his old companies, like a world-renowned marketing firm, right? They came up with a formula to really take brand, right, as an asset and really give it a value. So I'm interested in at least what you know as far as selling dental practices. And, you know, I don't expect you to know as much as James Orsini said about the value of brand on the balance sheet when he was talking about it, but is marketing or having a brand, is that also a way to increase? And that's just me as a marketer, very curious.
Sure. Yeah, and you're finding that today a lot more, Juan, is that dentists are no longer marketing as Dr. Juan Garcia, right? It may be Gold Lake DDS. And so the new patients coming are coming to a name other than the dentist. So when the dentist is ready to sell, there becomes less of an issue of potential loss of patients. Or there is a calculation, quite frankly,
That makes sense.
in the branding part of this, because a lot of what we are valuing is goodwill. You know, when you sell a dental practice, there is some equipment. I mean, there's office equipment, there's operatory chairs, there may be some kind of a CEREC machine or an X-ray machine. That's probably at most 30% of the value. The remainder is this intangible value. Branding is a big part of that, as is the workforce. How long have they been around? So while I don't tell you for sure that this is the branding element, all of that goes into the goodwill calculation, that intangible.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. And I guess back to for the accounting guys out there, and really people that look at money a lot, do care about the economy. What have you seen in the market really? Are dental practices ready to sell right now, or are they getting ready for some type of big push in 2020? How are economies affecting these sales? I mean, I'm just super interested.
Sure.
Right now.
Sure. So it's a fascinating time to be in this market, because there's a concept called, not even a concept anymore, because it's more than that. DSO is a dental service organization. Okay. So there are these corporate entities out there. Some are super, super big. You'd be amazed at some of the big Wall Street money and pension money that's going in and buying these dental practices. And then there's really, really small, what's called emerging DSOs, dentists that are entrepreneurs that are buying 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. And then there's docs that are buying 10 and 20 and 30. And then they're all trying to get gobbled up by the bigger and bigger guys. So there's this massive consolidation occurring right now. And there's money chasing dental practices that wasn't the case years ago. So when we're selling practices today, the likelihood is one of the potential buyers is this corporate type entity, as opposed to the kid who's 2 or 3 years out of school. And the kid 2 or 3 years out of school may be competing against a more well-financed, somewhat larger corporate entity.
Right.
Now, the bigger you get, you have a whole bunch of these behind you. Then you have this multiple expansion. So the guy who's buying 4 and 5 and then selling to somebody else who's got 10 and 20 already, the guy who's bigger is willing to pay a higher multiple for the smaller one. So it's getting to be a little bit of a vicious market. There is a lot of cannibalism, and people are getting hungry and chasing deals. Kind of crazy right now. It's a fascinating market at the moment.
Wow, that's super interesting. So I'm sure then for you, marketing is going to have its benefit there. And let's kind of segue into how you were able to really build your firm over the past. How long have you had your firm?
So this is my 10th year.
10th year? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So 20 years doing everything else, and now I can't believe it's already being close to 30 years now that I've been doing this. So the last 10 years have been building this firm to where it is today. 10 years ago, we were I'd just say a hodgepodge of stuff, which is probably not uncommon for a lot of people. We did a little of this, we did a little of that. I wouldn't say no to anybody. We almost said yes to everything, right?
Right.
So had a few restaurants, had some construction, had some house builders. We did an audit, maybe a couple of audits. I think we did at most 2 audits, a handful of reviews. We did some nonprofit. We just did a mess of everything.
That's interesting. Yeah, I bet that's how a lot of practices, let alone businesses, start. So
yeah, and so we came on at that time where I think 10 years ago that was the norm. You were just maybe an accounting shop just doing stuff, and maybe you were busy for really March and April. Maybe if you hustled, you were busier in June and July doing some projections. But if you didn't get the returns done in March and April, you got them done in September and October, and maybe you did some year-end tax planning, and you don't know what the hell you had. You just did stuff, and that's what we were. We went to scaling new heights about 5 years ago. Just a plug to, what what's his first name? It's Woodard. I can't remember, Joe Woodard. And it was
Okay.
really a life-changing event for my wife and I. My wife is also a partner in the firm. And we left there thinking, we can really be intentional about a few things. And we really decided at the time that since my background is in healthcare and we had a bunch of dentists already, we were just going to go all in, just do it, just serve dentists. We were going to say no to anybody else who came along most of the way and just say yes to dentists. That was kind of hard to make that pivot because, that when you say no, you're potentially losing revenue. Well, you are losing revenue, right?
Right.
And so, but by doing so, that allowed us to become more focused and intentional about growth. And then that allowed us to be able to really sell and learn and be better advisors to prospects who were coming to us because we had something better to do than just, we have a restaurant client here and we do construction over here. They're like, oh, you really do just dentists? Oh, that must mean something to me. So that now I'm willing to pay a little bit more of a premium because I'm maybe getting more advice, right? And then that was that when we made that pivot, then we could start going into value billing. And we're still on that journey, I tell you, but going to value billing, now we can really say, we've got these 3 price levels. If you really want the big one, where we're going to charge you more, then you're going to pay more, but you're going to get a heck of a lot more. Not everybody wants that, but that's okay. But a lot of people want to go for, I want a combination of that, but I also do know that Eric knows what he's talking about. Maybe I don't buy the high-end Mercedes, but I still want a Mercedes because I know that even in the mid-economy ones, I'm still getting a lot more stuff than I would get than in the Chevrolet or, an auto company that makes cars for everybody. And so we've been, and that was part of what allowed us to be more successful is because we went from just being dental into now we can give price points where people say, yeah, I want that. I want more of that. I'm willing to pay more for that. And that really helped us get to this other level.
Right. Any podcast listeners that just soaked all that in, right? First of all, Eric has a lot of experience here. Second of all, he's not just, talking and it's not just a coincidence, right? I do think it's a great idea to go into a niche, right? Sure, if you're just starting a practice, you may have to pick up clients that maybe you are marketing towards a niche just starting out, but let's say another client comes, it's hard to say no to revenue, right? Well, when you're just starting out, you might need that cash flow. Right. So you might take it, right? Yes. But another benefit of just branding yourself into a niche or a niche, however you say it, I always say niche, brand over time, it does increase sales and it increases price. Back to marketing nerd talk, right? I'm not just making this up. This is what James Orsini, one of the best marketers in the world right now, behind the scenes, he's not like really out there like Gary Vee, but he is the guy that Gary Vee brought in to help him build VaynerMedia for all you marketing guys out there. That being said, I'm very excited to see you grow now that you're into content. But before we get into content and some new exciting things, I guess I would say for some of the younger guys with practices, because here's what I think about, right? I don't want people to get sucked into, I'm making a video online. That means I have a great business, right? Even if it gets 1 million views or something like that, right? So would you mind talking about how you were really able to, and the audience might not have caught this, but you said that you have your wife working with you, right? And so you guys are the husband-wife combo, dynamic duo. So first of all, how were you able to make that work? That's my first question, okay? One of the most valuable members of your team, I imagine. And then would you mind talking about the rest of your team, how you're really able to grow, right?
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I mean, people are like, wow, you work with your wife. How is that possible? You know, and some people say, I don't think I could ever work with my spouse. We're
Mm-hmm.
very, I mean, I think we're similar people, but we have different personalities and we have different skill sets. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not as like we're fawning over each other all day. You do the debit and I do the credit. You know, we're like, we work in different offices, and I'm more the visionary managing partner, and she's does a phenomenal job on the implementing and the managing and the mentoring on a day-to-day basis with the team. So we don't necessarily work directly minute by minute or hour by hour on anything, and we never really work that way. Yeah, obviously when we do leave the office and we do go home at night, I think my kids are like understand accelerated depreciation in section 179 far better than anybody else, because they're like,
Love it.
stop talking about work, guys. You know, it's
That's
like,
awesome.
we can't not talk about work, unfortunately. We got to try and check out. I think that's probably where the overlap and the messiness that happens at home is we can't always leave it at the office, because we
Right.
live, you know, we do different things. And a lot of times when we do get home, it's when we kind of talk about this stuff. I mean, to be able to work with your spouse, if you can't trust your spouse as a business partner, you know, forget about it. But if you have arguably your spouse, who's the person you can trust more than anything else with, you know, she's got your back, right? You guys can do this with the same vision, man. You know, the future's unlimited at what you can and cannot do. And we're living proof of that. We're very different personality types. When you do the DISC personality profiles, I'm a high D, high C. She's much more intuitive and sensitive. So we complement each other. And that's the only reason why we've been as successful as we've been. Luckily, I married that person. But also luckily that we have these complementing personality types where we learned over time how we can work together to make this a better firm. You ask about the team we have. You know, I've got 5 full-time accountants and 2 part-time accountants. I have a senior valuation analyst and a full-time office administrator, jack of all trades. You know, Kelly is really awesome doing all those things to help me make this practice better. Really lucky to have picked her up, and I've just got a great team in place, and most of them me. Some from the very beginning, and others really have joined the firm in the last couple of years. But we've had people stick with us for a long period of time.
Love it, love it, and you know, that's amazing. I can definitely, you know, I can't necessarily speak to even having a wife yet, but I have seen my parents be married for 25 years, right? So that is something to witness, to learn from. And what I would say about that, me having not met my wife yet, my future wife, or maybe I have, I don't know. But I would, back to what you said, right? You know, you guys have your own talents, your own experience, your own expertise, what you bring to the table, right? If my wife does something completely different, then we're not necessarily working on the business as hardcore as if, you know, I met another marketer or something of that nature. So I guess it's literally, sometimes people say, oh, I could never work with my spouse, right? I would say it's probably different with different people. So that's just a super interesting topic.
Just to mention again is I think for anybody listening who is an accountant who runs a small firm, I bet if they looked at their client list, there's likely a high percentage, maybe not more than 50%, but maybe that are husband wife. You know, people think, oh, wow, you know, you're unique that you and your wife work together. When I start looking at all my clients and I start having those meetings, many times it's husband and wife. It may be the wife it may be the wife who's the dentist and the husband who's a stay-at-home dad, and he does all the administrative work, and vice versa. And any kind of business that we work with, most of them being medical practices, but even some of the other services we work with, many times it is the husband and wife working together. So we're not an anomaly. I do think in my firm, in my client base, that if I did the math, I would suspect there's probably about 40% of my clients are husband-wife.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's actually an amazing situation to be in. I don't think for me that's something that's gonna uh my marriage decision isn't going to be
sure.
based on that.
And it
But
should
if
not.
okay, thank you. I appreciate that advice.
Yeah.
I'll take it. But if it did happen, oh, that would be so amazing. That would be super convenient. That would be so beneficial. So very, very interesting. That's amazing, Eric. Um, Back to growing your practice. While I want this to be a valuable source to the listeners at home, right? It sounds like a lot has gone great for you. And, and social media, we might talk about a lot of our successes, right? This, that look really good. But can you speak to some of the challenges that you went through in growing your practice or really making it this far, being
Sure.
successful, right?
Yeah. I think for the most part, it's all about people and selecting the right people. Whether the people are your team members, whether the people are your clients, whether people are your partners and partners in
Mm-hmm.
the legal sense. And I've made my fair share of mistakes in all of those along the way. I don't think there's an easy answer to how you overcome that. I think it's kind of like if you watch Forged in Fire, right? And how do they make a great knife? It's a lot of heat and a lot of pounding. And I am where I am today because I've had heat and I've had a lot of pounding on me as
Wow.
well. And I think when every time we hire somebody who doesn't work out, so why didn't that work? If we brought on a client and that didn't work out, so why didn't it work out?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it comes down to over time learning about who you are, learning about uh, your firm culture. That is a deliberate process to get through. I don't think you
Okay.
can say the first day you put your shingle up and you say, now I'm a CPA firm and here's my core values and here's my vision. You may do that, but I think at that point it's just an assignment and you're writing that down. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
after a handful of years that you're like, I'm beginning to realize why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm beginning to realize that the
Wow.
people that have been around me for so long, these are the big things that we share in common. So it's not easy to say, page one of the book, here's what you do, have core values, because I think that's unfair to the person who's starting a business. It's
Uh-huh.
day one, pay attention to it. But year five, be really serious about what it means to have core values and make sure the people working with you that have succeeded with you are part of that process. And so when we've hired people and
Wow.
failed, we've been able to look back and say, you know what is it that we missed in that? And how do we interview better the next time? When we bring on a client that we didn't like, what is it that we learned from the onboarding that we should have paid more attention to? When there's ever been a partner along the way that had failed, why did that fail? And I've had my fair share of all those. And it's come back to saying, I now know what our purpose is. And when I share that with a prospect, when I share that with a partner, if they don't get excited about the same thing when I share it, okay, that's first sign that maybe we don't have the right person. When I'm
Mm-hmm.
interviewing somebody and I say innovation and passion are part of our core values
Mm-hmm.
and they have no connection to either of those, then the likelihood is we're not going to hire them going, right? We're not going to hire them. And so, yeah, I've learned from those mistakes and I've learned from them, but I've experienced them. And I think as of all people, it's still a journey. I'm never going to get it perfect, but I'm trying to get better every single time
Mm-hmm.
that I go through that. But it's all about people. And I think you really need to know what you're all about.
Welcome back. We had some technical difficulties, but let's power through, right? So Simon Sinek. Eric.
Yeah, it's a great TED Talk. It's at most 10 to 15 minutes. And he's made a fortune on his book, Why?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a book probably that most entrepreneurs should read. Why do you do what it is you do, right? And once you figure that out, then I think you can be very passionate about what you do. At the end of the day, as a CPA and any other my quote unquote competitors out there. We prepare tax returns and we generate financial statements. That sounds very boring, right? But what do you do to make that different? And when you look at what I say about what we do on LinkedIn, I start off with, we're in the business of changing people's lives. We stand alongside them, helping them achieve their entrepreneurial goals with accurate financial information and well thought out planning and forecasting. You'll never miss deadlines. You won't be surprised. With us, you'll make more money, work less hours, enjoy what you do, and pay less taxes. Would you want to buy accounting services from me? Right? And that was kind of for the team. They're like, we like that. It's like, now I've got my tribe, right? And now we're in it together now. And they're like, we're in this to change people's lives. We're not just doing an 1120S and a tax projection. Of course we are, but in the context of people are on the other side of what it is we do, and we want to do the right by them, the right thing by them. And I think that's when you listen to Simon Sinek and when you can say that and people connect, that's the golden circle. That's that emotional component to, do you just want a tax return done by us? No, of course not. We want something more. And this is the more. This is the emotional component. This is why people want to come back and work with us time and time and time again. Why we have a great team working for us. It's that emotional component. That's the golden circle. It's the emotional component of what it is we do.
I've got to say, I love the way you framed that as a marketer, right? That the clients may not understand why they should be hiring a CPA, right? Why they should be taking advice from someone experienced when, I don't know, there's free advice online or what have you, wherever you can get it from, right? It's really what counsel do you have around you? Why are they doing what they're doing? And are they really just concerned with a check from you in the services industry, right? Or are they trying to, as another business owner working with other business owners and other executives and teams, are they really trying to achieve your why as well, right? My mentor, David Meltzer, one of my mentors, really gave me some solid advice starting out. He said, okay, go into the space one being more interested than interesting. And I think that's even applicable. He didn't just say that because I'm young, although he did say that's a great place for a young person to start in a professional industry, right? Versus coming in and saying that I'm the guru, I'm the expert, right? I haven't said that. Other people called me the expert, but I just gotta hand it to you on that description, right? Because you said the team is like, wow. And when you said that, I was like, wow. So that's very interesting. That's very interesting. So
that means a lot, because that's important for somebody to say, wow, because that's, hey, I do your taxes. Big deal, right? But if you can get a wow out of how we're doing this, then that means a lot to me. That's awesome. Thank you for that.
Right. Of course. I mean, like I said, I'm excited to see even more content from you, right? For the listeners, I guess, as we wrap up here, you have so much knowledge, right? Is there anything that you want the listeners to know, or anything, whether that is benefiting them, whether you just want to talk about how good you are, right? not that CPAs are really the most arrogant in the space.
We're a very humble group of people.
Love it. I truly love this space. And so is there anything you would like the listeners to know, whether that's a piece of advice, right? Or anything else?
Yeah,
I mean, talk about, that's the real question, right? What would you like this opportunity to talk about?
So to wrap up, I think it's critical to not overstate the obvious about always be learning. Yeah, we have a responsibility to get 40 hours of technical CPE per year, and I do believe that there's a place for self-study. But to really get out of your comfort zone, to really take yourself to the next level, I think it's important to go to things like ZeroCon or maybe Scaling New Heights. We're around other folks that may be positive influences on you that you can ask questions of to help you grow your business. While it's important to stay sharp on the new tax law, while it's important to stay current on peer review regulation, it's really critical that you meet with colleagues. And it's hard to do that if you just go to your office every day and work out of your desk and do online self-study. You need to go to these annual conferences. It is unimaginable where I would be if I didn't have a chance to do Scaling New Heights a couple of times and go to ZeroCon. The folks,
That's interesting.
Jackie Velez, or Jacqueline, I always call her Jacqueline.
I know her.
Jacqueline Velez from Zero has been a huge partner and a huge help. She's invested in my future, and it's really great when you can have a partner like Zero saying, okay,
I love it.
How do we make you succeed, right? And while, again, we can be great experts on 199 Cap A or whatever the new current tax law requires us to be proficient in to serve our clients, it's these kind of things. It's reading books, and it's going to these annual conferences that really can make you a better business owner. So I think that's the biggest thing for me is it's not only technical proficiency, but getting exposed to other people and sit at tables and ask questions at lunchtime. How are you? Juan, what are you all about? Right?
Right. Yeah.
And then you're like, well, here, and then you're like, let me introduce you to these people. And then people leave like, I cannot believe how much I learned not in the classroom, but talking to other people.
I love it. And you mentioned ZeroCon. I mean, I was there too. I wish I would have known you were there. I actually didn't.
I wasn't.
Oh, okay. You weren't there this year.
I went to Scaling New Heights this year, my friend. And I go to that one every a few years, but I'm going to go back to ZeroCon next year. So if you go, I'll make sure to find you at the next one.
Love it. Hey, I'll be there. You're right. That was actually my first accounting conference outside of academia in school, right? So that was really interesting just to see all the entrepreneurs, the innovative ideas in the space. Since I'm a marketer, of course, prospects were there for me. And so I got pitches, just talked to a new client that I onboarded this month that I got from ZeroCon. Pretty interesting. And that client did, the path to getting that client did happen kind of at lunch, right? Sitting with new people. Hey, what do you do? Yeah. That type of thing. So also for any accountants out there, I'm curious if you've been to any dental conferences. Is there any, because I know you mentioned ZeroCon and that's more for the accounting space, right? Yep. But I still go to some marketing conferences, but I view, even though marketing conferences are really cool and like I go with my team and that type of thing, ZeroCon was just really eye-opening for both me and my clients, right? Yeah, so right. Would you suggest they also go to conferences within their niche or their focus?
Absolutely. And we do. We're a big supporter of the New Mexico Dental Association. We do attend some of the Texas Association meetings. I've actually been a speaker as well, which has really been an honor to be able to talk to dentists. And it's amazing. I mean, obviously we want to give, provide information, but it's amazing how much business we do pick up. And again, goes to credibility, goes to make me the expert in the industry when I'm speaking to dentists about the new tax law and the effects on them. So I've been able to do that. And actually this next year, I do hope to be a speaker at either ZeroCon or Scaling New Heights. So those of you listening, you can give me a call hereafter on business valuations and how a CPA who may not be an expert valuator can learn enough to know how to advise a prospect, or not even a prospect, a client, on why is it that a balance sheet and income statement becomes important beyond just the obvious? When does it have importance in a valuation conversation? So that's what I do hope to get out of some of what I'm doing, is to be a speaker within the industry as well.
I'd love for them to get you to speak, because back to younger professionals, less experienced professionals, really taking advantage of social media and the traction that they can get from it, right? Experience just can't be bought like likes can be bought or followers and things of
Right.
that nature. So yeah, I would love to hear you speak. Would think that would be super beneficial. But it's been a fun time interviewing you. And just this last question here, because I'm really interested in endurance, pushing the limit, right? Although we work smart, I really like to hang my hat on working harder than others. So how was your marathon yesterday? So you ran a marathon. That's tough. And that's such an interesting to do at the point of 5.0. I might use that when I get my 5.0. So that's really cool. But would you mind talking about that a little bit? Because I always relate business to sports. I just think it matters so much. How was that?
It does. And just for clarity, it was a half marathon, not a full. So it was only 13, not 26 miles.
Only 13, guys.
Yeah. And I finished at 1:40, 21 seconds. So I finished in the front of the pack. I didn't win.
Nice.
But you know, I'm really proud of my time, and I know I motored through it, and I really felt great. I still feel great today. And there are the analogies and similarities between running a half marathon and, quite frankly, running a marathon to business are just the similarities are uncanny. You know, you need to start with a plan. I had written on my arm all my time elements. You know, where did I want to be at certain moments in time? Where did I need to be if I wanted to finish under 144? Where did I need to be if I finished under 139? And know along the way. So pacing yourself and pushing yourself, knowing what you're capable of. And I worked with a trainer, I worked on diet. So preparation is critical. And so as I've reached 50 this year, I've done this run. This is my 4th time. This is my fastest time yet.
Wow.
And it came from just
impressive
intention. Thank you. And the deliberateness, if that's a word, deliberateness of being focused on the goal. And you know, and I kind of say, you know, it's kind of fun when I'm running this and I know where I want to be. And there's people at the very beginning who run past me and go super fast, and then they flame out, right? And then then like within the last mile, there's a few of us that are just motoring past the others, and it's just, I didn't want to try and chase you, and I didn't want to try and beat you early on. I just knew what I was capable of, and I just kind of kept pushing for that. And that's I think that's
amazing.
Nice analogy to what we do is know what you're good at, surround yourself with great people, have mentors along the way, and preparation. And with all that, you'll have a great practice and you'll have a great time. And I hope someday we'll do this run together, my man.
Wow. Maybe we will. Maybe we will. Okay. That's a challenge. Let's do it. Let's do it. Wow. You've provided so much value for the audience. I really appreciate that, Eric. And I would suggest, if you are an accountant out there, that you would connect with Eric. He's been kind of looking at my content as well. He's in the circles looking at JX4, that type of thing, right? So I'm really excited to see the accounting space grow from the media and marketing side, if anything, and that's me personally, right? So go ahead and connect with him, because he's going to keep doing well, I would imagine, and I would project, right? But Eric, where can they find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, so you know, the easiest way would be to connect with me on LinkedIn, and maybe somebody direct message say, "Hey, I listened to you with Juan, and I want to learn more." And I would love to just share everything that we've learned. It's been a good journey, and I want to start giving back to the extent I can. I think we've learned a lot, both good and bad, and I want to share that with anybody.
Right.
And then they can send me an email. My email address is Eric, E-R-I-C, at myabq, as in my Albuquerque, CPA, myabqcpa.com. So.
Thank you. And by the way, that's a funny question from me, because I will actually have his LinkedIn linked below so that you won't have to search, right? Unless you're watching this somewhere else. But if not, if you can't find him, find me and I'll lead you his way. Really amazing story. And maybe we'll have you on again. So would love to have you on again. Really.
I would love that. And I think you and I need to do this up in Napa Valley, and we need to do it in a vineyard, and we could talk about cultivating a practice the same way you grow a better grape and on a better vine, right?
That is interesting. That sounds like a plan.
Perfect. We can do that.
Well, thank you so much, Eric.
It was a pleasure, Juan, and I really, really appreciate you having me as a guest today. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.